Welcome back. In our next video, we're going to consider a concept that I got introduced to as a child. In fact, when I wrote an essay to get into university, I used this concept. So I hope you enjoy it. It's all about the science of deduction. For my final demonstration, I want to share a little something with you. We talked in the beginning about how we know what we know. Is it through observation? Is it through belief? Is it through reason? A lot of what we do in the academic world is an application of reason to big problems. And we also collect information. We have some psychology students, some math students here, some biology students, some chemistry students. And through all of that, we may be exercising what we call deduction, or the deductive approach. And as a young person, I read all over the place. I read lots of books, and I came across this idea of the science of deduction, best articulated by the most rational mind who never existed. And that was, of course, none other than Sherlock Holmes. An incredible rational thinker, obviously dreamt up by Conan Doyle, and Conan Doyle was a doctor, and one of his doctor professors, Dr. Bell, told him how you could look at people and read them by their body language and the sorts of things like that, and understand things about them. Conan Doyle was really influenced by that and decided to write the great detective stories. And of course, he created this extraordinarily rational mind. And in the study of Scarlet, which is one of the first serialized stories that ended up in the Strand magazine, there's this introduction of the idea of the science of deduction. And in there, he develops this idea throughout the stories. And my favorite application of the science of deduction is in the story called The Man with the Yellow Face. And one afternoon, Holmes comes back. He's been out in London somewhere, comes back to the flat on Baker Street. And Watson's there and says, there was a gentleman who called for you today, but he's left his pipe on the mantelpiece. And Holmes picks up the pipe and he looks at it and he says, oh yes, he's about 6'3", he's reasonably strong, he's wealthy, and he's left-handed. And Watson says, how on earth did you know that? And he said, he says, let me tell you. He says, when I look at the pipe and I look at the stem of the pipe, it looks like someone bit the stem of the pipe on a regular basis, which suggests to me they have a strong mandibular joint and they're a strong person. But those cracks that formed in the stem of the pipe have been filled with silver, which suggests the person who owns that pipe is of reasonable financial means. And the quality of the tobacco within the pipe also reinforces this idea I have about his personal wealth. He says, that's very interesting, but what about the 6'3" and the left-handed bit? He says, you'll note there's a burn on the side of the pipe, which suggests to me that he lights the pipe on the gas lamp, and one has to be rather tall to reach the gas lamp. And the burn on the side of the pipe suggests to me that he lights it with his left hand. That's wonderful, isn't it? That's fantastic. What a great kind of explanation of how you reach that conclusion. And I've been thinking about Holmes for quite some time, and I thought, was that really the application of reason and the science of deduction? Or was Holmes just a magician? Did Holmes actually see the man as he left the flat and made up that whole story, convincing Watson that he had these wonderful powers? So was it deduction, was it deception, or was it something else? So I'd like to try explore that idea with you now about deduction, deception, and something else. You may be familiar with the popular game called Clue in America, or Cluedo here in the United Kingdom. And I've manufactured something that looks roughly similar to that. You'll know in this game that there are different choices one can make in the game. In the game, of course, these choices are determined randomly. You choose a room, you choose a perpetrator, and you choose a weapon. So I thought we could recreate that game here and maybe explore this idea of the science of deduction, or the power of deduction. So let me start. It's a bit like our little Cluedo cards here, but you get to be a bit more actively involved. Let's see, you, sir, what's your name? Matt. Matt. Give you a pencil and a card. If you look at that design of the manor house, the building, etc., think of one of the rooms. You can have the kitchen, the ballroom, the library, the billiard room, the study, the hall, the dining room, etc., or the lounge. You're free to choose absolutely any room. Now, while Matt's doing that, The second choice that needs to be made is a set of perpetrators. We've got Mr. Caswell, Mrs. Kelly, Mr. Rothbart, Miss Arndt, Dr. Bolsover, Mr. Dunford, Mr. Penlington, Mrs. Elias, Dr. Stetson, Dr. Cushman, Mr. Grossberg, Esquire, must be a lawyer, Mrs. Lyon, Mr. Cassidy, Ms. Wise, Reverend Hilford, and Mrs. Rhodes. Looking at those names. Hello, what's your name? Shagutha? Yeah. Nice to meet you. I'll give you a card that you can place, write a name of one of the perpetrators on that card, and then put it in the envelope. So, Matt, have you, you've written someone down. Okay, could you, yeah, or you haven't chosen yet. Not someone, a room. You've written a room down, is that right? Okay. Fold your card in half. That's great. And you're happy with your choice. And you remember the choice that you made, is that right? That's great. If you could just lick that and seal it off, that would be fantastic. Now, the third choice we have, beyond the perpetrators, have you selected one? You have. Excellent. Is the choice of weapons. I've expanded the list here to include many more weapons than in the game, but as you can see, they're quite brutal. We have a lead pipe, we have a rope, a knife, a gun, a candlestick, a machete, a garrote, a baseball bat, a truncheon, harpoon, sword, axe, pike, brass knuckles, brick, and a halberd. My final participant here, I'm looking to see who we might have. We'll write this down, and again, like we've chosen our building, room, and our perpetrator, the weapon. Could you write a weapon down, sir? What's your name?
Oliver.
Oliver, great. Write the weapon down. So, Matt, you have a room. You have a perpetrator. Excellent. And pretty soon we're going to have a weapon. May I have your envelope, please? Thank you very much. And the pencil. Thank you very much. Oliver, how's it going? Done? Awesome. Thank you very much. And you have yours and the pencil. Wonderful. Okay. So, 3 choices, perhaps randomly, not randomly made, based on our game. Now, I've been watching you, Matt. I've been watching you in your choices and how you've been observing the proceedings today. So, let us first think about the room in which our crime, our murder, has taken place. Think of the room. Have you ever had your mind read? Matt? No, you just have. How did it feel? It didn't. Excellent. I've committed myself in writing in advance, okay, because I like this making a stake and then looking for verification afterwards. So, number 1, let's see if I was correct. You wrote the hall, is that right? Okay, so our murder has taken place in the hall. And I wrote hall. Thank you very much. Martina liked that one. Okay, so that's the room. Applause is not going to be, objective in this case. Right, number 2. You were taken by one of our perpetrators. Somebody up there. Think of them. Think of, I think I've got it. Okay. Committed myself in writing. Number 2. There we are. And that was Mrs. Lion, is that right? Okay, were you thinking of the animal or just like the name Lion? And you chose a woman, a brutal, murderous woman. Okay. Let's see. I wrote Mrs. Lion. Thank you very much. Okay. Oliver, concentrate very hard on the act of murder itself. Okay? We have a room, we have a perpetrator. You didn't know the room, You didn't know the perpetrator, but you had a good idea of how to effectively kill someone. Is that correct? At least in your imagination.
Well, I mean, you're recording, so I'm not going to say I've got a good idea of how to kill someone.
You won't declare. You can always, declare the fifth if you like. Okay, fantastic. Does that mean anything to you?
Yes.
Yes, okay. I know can do. Maybe draw a picture. No, that's not going to work. I'll start over. I'll tell you what. I've got it, Oliver. Just write that down in big letters, and then we'll clarify with you. You wrote down, if I'm not mistaken, you wrote down the rope, so around the neck. Is that right? And I wrote down rope. Thank you very much. So, the science of deduction is all about using facts about the world that we know to say facts about the world that we do not yet know. Some people also call that inference. Making assumptions, drawing conclusions, the use of the mind, and the power of deduction. I hope that you have enjoyed the demonstrations today, and I hope to see you in the future. Thank you very much. So I know in that video we just used a house, a perpetrator, and a weapon, a bit like Cluedo, but it does illustrate the larger point I'm trying to make, that the science of deduction sits under so much of what we do. We have facts about the world that we observe, we draw conclusions about the world we do not yet observe. And that science of deduction sits under so much of what we do. So I hope you have enjoyed this sequence of videos where not only have I shown you how magic can be used as a medium of larger communication, but the fundamental ideas that we explored from one video to the next. Thanks for watching.